Well, we turn now to the controversial execution overnight in Alabama.
A convicted cop killer stopped eating his final meal after he thought his life would be spared. But then a reversal by the Supreme Court allowed his execution to move forward. Overnight, Alabama's executioner putting Nathaniel Woods to death, capping an end to a whirlwind final days for the convicted cop killer and his supporters. A jury found Woods guilty in the 2004 killing of 3 Birmingham police officers. And although prosecutors said Woods was not the gunman and Woods' convicted accomplice said he alone killed officers, Woods was found guilty on capital murder charges. After exhausting all options, Woods said his final goodbye to his family Thursday afternoon.
So many people affected around the globe. Thousands of new cases of coronavirus were reported overnight. The number now topping 98,000 worldwide.
Yeah, that's right, Amy. Good morning. Here in the UK, we've now had our first death from coronavirus. The Prime Minister's office saying it's likely it will spread in a significant way. And it seems that the wave that started in China is now cresting here in Europe. Italy's cases keep jumping, and now the Vatican has its first case. A medical clinic there has now been shut down for sterilization. And take a look. This gives you a sense of how quiet major tourist spots around the world are. Rome, Spanish Steps, as they normally are, and now, and a similar picture in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. Take a look at what it usually looks like, and now that it's been restricted. This is the holiest site in Islam. Millions of people are being affected by this.
A ceasefire in Syria's Idlib province has just come into effect after months of heavy bombardment by Syrian government forces and their Russian allies. The truce was agreed by the presidents of Turkey and Russia. Idlib is the last region still controlled by the jihadists and rebels who are backed by Turkey, who have been trying to overthrow the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad since 2011. The UN estimates almost 1 million people have fled their homes since December because of the fighting. In the early hours of this morning, Russian airstrikes killed 16 civilians sheltering in a farm in Marat Mizrin.
Working by flashlight to reclaim the living from the rubble. The target here, inexplicably, a poultry farm, which became a refuge for some of Idlib's displaced.
Early morning in Mosul, these SWAT team members get a final briefing before they set out to look for ISIL fighters. We accompany this specialist police unit as it heads into the countryside in Iraq's northern Nineveh province. ISIL was forced out of Mosul in 2017 by Iraqi troops with support from the US-led coalition, and the Iraqi government announced its territorial defeat shortly after. But thousands of fighters have retreated into rural areas where security forces are spread thin and where hills like these offer plenty of opportunities to hide. What the unit needs is surveillance and support from the air. Until recently, that was provided by the American-led coalition in Iraq. But since tensions between the US and Iran escalated earlier this year, those activities have largely come to a halt.
2 New Jersey 7th graders are facing criminal charges over the Skullbreaker Challenge. The challenge is causing serious injuries offline. 12-year-old Parker from Alabama broke his wrist, but the challenge can also cause even more serious head injuries. That's what happened to Mark Schenker's 13-year-old son.
He subsequently fell, hit his head, and suffered a concussion and a seizure as a result of the fall.
Now his son's 2 7th grade classmates are facing third-degree charges of aggravated assault and endangering an injured victim. Please talk to your children about the potential consequences when you participate in a challenge or online trend. While the challenges may seem funny or get views on social media platforms, they can have serious and long-lasting health consequences.
Yeah, well, I actually heard the explosion itself. I was about 400 meters away in a building 400 meters away from the U.S. Embassy itself in the Lake neighborhood. At just after 11 o'clock this morning, local time. I got to the scene around 11:30, 11:40, and by that point, there was a large crowd of people who were sort of looking towards the embassy. There was quite a lot of security activity. We saw security vans moving around. There appeared to be on the street about 100 meters away, so quite far away from the embassy walls, what looked to be a human body part. We had heard from witnesses who are being quoted by the state news agency that it had been a suicide bomber, possibly on a motorcycle, who had blown himself up.
The appeal chamber considers it appropriate to amend the appeal decision to the effect that the prosecutor is authorized to commence investigation in relation to alleged crimes committed on the territory of Afghanistan.
Some of your favorite books, like Harry Potter and The Color Purple, are censored across the country as part of the largest book ban in the U.S. Can you guess what that is? According to a recent report from PEN America, U.S. prisons have the largest ban in the country, denying inmates access to basic educational tools and materials for self-improvement.
Yeah, it really ranges from the obvious. There's a lot of pornography, for example, that is banned from prisons, to things like Field and Stream magazine, National Geographic magazine, editions of the New York Times, to Angie Thomas's The Hate U Give, which is a quite famous young adult novel, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, which is interesting. Kansas state prisons allow both they don't allow The Hate U Give or The Bluest Eye, but they do allow Mein Kampf.